What's up, spell slingers? My name is Garion John Wells.
I'm Drew Flitton.
And I'm Cory Janibagian, and this is UNTAP
Upkeep.
Drink.
Beer Up.
Welcome back, guys. Today, we are almost through with our Brewers Week.
This is episode 4. Today, we're talking about upgrades.
Ooh. As all the dudes at my work say, it's Thursday, so that means it's Little Friday. Looking forward to the weekend, and we've got a hell of a lot of beers today, but we'll get there. I wouldn't say a hell of a lot, but more.
I mean,
more
it's
than normal.
significantly more than normal, considering that we all usually have one beer per episode. Upgrading to 2
is a lot.
It's a lot, especially since these are not normal sized beers for the most part. Cory, he's got the casual.
So we're talking about upgrading pre-cons.
Absolutely.
We've got an example, and we're talking about upgrading not so tasty beers.
Okay,
not
we're
necessarily
talking about, quote unquote bad beers. But first, let's talk about the good beers that we have here. The beers that we're stoked to be drinking. The beers that, I mean, some of them are pretty local.
Mine's as local as it gets.
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. I've got the Salt Fire Charlotte Sometimes Summer Blonde Ale. It says Charlotte is the cool but not too cool blonde hanging out back at the Salt Fire barbecue. Drinkable and approachable, Charlotte's subtle, well-balanced malt flavors taste like sunshine after the rain with just a touch of hops. Perfect for those in search of something smooth and delicate.
It also says happy/sad.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I'm not sure what that meter is for. So this one's sitting at 5.2% ABV. And funny enough, this brewery does not list the IBUs, but they list the BU-GU ratio, which we
learned
about
in the first 2 episodes is the bitterness units to the gravity units, which is the kind of bitterness versus the sugar, the sweet. Yep. And so what is it?
So 0.5 is exactly in the middle. Anything above that tends to be more bitter, and anything below that starts to be a little more sweet, and this one is sitting at 0.45. So we're just dipping into that sweetness here.
Well, can you confirm or deny?
I can confirm. That is a delicious summer blonde. Very fruity, like a little citrus, but kind of underlying. It's very much like wheat forward.
Okay.
As we can tell by looking at it, it's pretty clear, maybe a little hazy, but super, super light in color.
I kind of, on the nose here, it's a little bit funky.
It smells kind of like spicy, like holiday spice.
Yeah.
Ooh, that first sip, I did not get anything but just like a little bit of sweetness.
Yeah, it's the wheat comes through really, really hard, and then it just mellows out into a little bit of sweetness.
Oh, yeah, okay. There. So I had to clear my palate first here, but the wheat actually does come through after that. Because before, I was just getting like a little bit of sweetness and just kind of like almost like a lagery flavor, but clearing my palate, getting rid of all of the random stuff I've been eating today. It's nice. It is just a good summer blonde.
I wouldn't
really
say there's anything.
There's nothing like
spectacular,
offensive or exactly like extraordinary about it. It's just a like
kind
good,
of
classic
kind
summer
of basic, but it is good.
Yeah,
refreshing.
All right, so for mine, I've got the Roadhouse Brewing Company's. This is from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, so fairly local for us, Idahoans. We got the Mountain Jam Volume 4, which is a hazy IPA.
Ooh.
So they got like a whole, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm just gonna read it. If dreams were thunder and lightning were desire, this liquid shapeshifter would light up the night sky like incandescent vitality.
So in already.
What?
It is blues. It is rock. It is folk. And it is country. Its slinky lines eclipse the genres and the stereotypes. It is a sinuous movement of both dexterity and grace, and it will draw you in like the moon pulls the tide.
Fuck me.
So there's like, I don't want to sound condescending, but like it is like the not bluegrass, like the hippie gathering, just like group people together and like love and peace and all the shit.
Woodstock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I'm all down for it. As long as your beer is good.
Oh, yeah. If you're going to write that on the back of your can, you better back that up with some flavor.
Flavor.
So straight off the nose, this is an IPA. We got that hop central focus. It's citrusy, fruity. Ooh, but you don't really get too much of that bitterness on the palate. That's probably one of the best IPAs we've had. It's smooth. It's fruity. There's just a little bit of hoppiness to it. It's in at 6.2% ABV, and they don't list the IBUs, but I'd probably guess like
an IPA.
Yeah, I'd probably guess like 30 to 40, but I'd guess the BUGU to be pretty even, honestly, like 0.5, somewhere in there. Like it's nice.
It smells incredibly like an IPA, but it does not taste like one.
Which we seem to find a lot of the hazy IPAs. They just don't have that classic hoppiness.
Yeah, they're a lot easier to drink. And this one, the citrus comes through really hard.
Yeah, that one's an interesting beer. It's got a lot of citrus. It's got a lot of hop, but hop in almost like a piney kind of zone. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it's not like the aggressive piney bitterness. It's just that smell that you get.
Like refreshing.
Yeah.
That tastes like the Northwest smells.
And last but certainly not least, Cory, you brought...
So my buddy Stuart recommended this to me, and it's the Montucky Cold Snack. So it's a lager. It's 4% ABV. It has 0 IBUs. It is the unofficial beer of Montana.
Oh, so we're getting just all sorts of local up in here.
Hell
for
yeah.
Idaho people.
It smells like a lager. It smells super weedy. We kind of talked about this, I think on the dark episode, but some of those weird, funky flavors come through sometimes with malts, and it sort of adds a fruity banana kind of flavor.
It's the esters.
Yeah,
from the
and
malts.
that's kind of what I'm getting. I'm getting a little bit of funk.
I was going to say, I taste that. It's very, very light.
Yeah.
It's very much like, I don't know, like a Coors or a Corona or something.
It is,
but
and not to like talk down generic lagers, American lagers, but it's like that, but with some nice fruity sweetness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got just a little bit extra that you're not going to get in an uber filtered American like standard Bud Light kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird that we have a hazy IPA right here that's like not filtered at all, and all the ads and stuff's like ultra premium filtered with 6 nanometer pours, and it's like, bro, just give me the raw goods.
Just
we
make
don't
a
need
beer
that.
and let me drink it.
Yeah, no, don't just make a beer. Like, make a good beer that I can drink and enjoy. Don't spend all the money to do all the bullshit to it if it's gonna make the beer taste just bland and generic. As we get to our first topic here, we're talking about beer, of course. It's Brewers Week, day 4. We're talking about how to make a quote-unquote bad beer better.
So
Upgrades.
Better is not in quotes.
We've got to right. Bad beer maybe in quotes. Better not necessarily.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe better should be in quotes.
Beer better.
Yeah,
So-
better is up to you.
We wanted to make sure that we stated that there's really no such thing as a bad beer.
Right, we're gonna throw out the disclaimer: quote-unquote bad beers aren't bad beers.
So bad beer is subjective.
Absolutely, they're often just totally fine. They're not good to you,
Right.
But they're not. That doesn't make them bad, right?
And a lot of times what we're talking about, especially for guys like us who are on a podcast where we're reviewing a lot of quote-unquote fancier beers, what we're talking about when we talk about bad beers isn't necessarily poor tasting beers or things that we actively think is gross, but things that are generally bland or less flavorful than
So
their
the idea that I came up with when I was writing this episode was that the beers aren't necessarily bad. They're not good to us, right? Instead, we'd rather have something with more flavor, better flavor, or just more interesting flavor, right? And so that kind of brings the idea of, so what constitutes a bad beer, right? And so to go off those ideas, we've got lack of flavor, right? Which to me, I feel that light beer is often guilty of this, right? They just don't have enough. And I will say that Utah generics are 100% guilty of this.
Yeah, in order to make a light beer, you sort of have to cut on
Everything.
a lot of what adds the flavor.
And so we're talking about generics, Coors Light, Miller Light, all that kind of stuff. And then the next one is, if you want better flavor, then you probably have just kind of bad flavor, right? So that's usually have for these beers, they usually have a strong flavor that's just not good to you. So the examples that I have is Bud anything. I do not like Bud. Keystone, Ice House. Cory and I went on a camping trip with some friends, and they brought along 2 cans of Milwaukee's Best, and we did everything that we possibly could to get rid of those, which was everyone avoided them until the last moment possible. We're not trying to talk down on beers.
Right.
We're
We're going to try and talk them up.
Yeah, we're not in a amazing craft boom of beers to not try awesome, crazy new beers. I'm not anyways. I'm not going to just go get a 30 rack of Coors and call it a day. I'm going to go get like 6 good beers and enjoy myself rather than just trying to get pissed drunk on shit beer.
Yeah, it's just whatever you want to do with your beer. It's up to you.
Now, we have a third category here for quote-unquote bad beers, and that's the one-note wonders.
Yeah, these are beers that are kind of boring, but otherwise unobtrusive, right? So the example we had on the camping trip that I'm talking about, we had some Rolling Rocks, and we were sitting around the campfire and just like trying to describe what Rolling Rock is. And what we realized is that if you ever see like a college or like a house party in movies and it just has like beer, that's Rolling Rock. It is beer, and that's how you describe it. It's
generic beer.
It's just beer, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just beer. So we've got like Rolling Rock. For us, we've got Olympia, PBR, Coronas. These are totally fine beers, but they're kind of one note. They don't really have a lot of complexity or just like these crazy flavor characteristics. They're totally fine, but they don't do anything bad. They just don't do anything great.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might not see these as sessionable beers, but I think these are the most sessionable beers of all time.
Yeah, they're usually between like 4% to 5%. They're crushable.
Yeah, they're just, if you just want to chill and drink one beer.
So this kind of brings up, how do we improve bad beers? Cory?
So the first category we have on this list is a simple social settings. If you're hanging out with your friends and not thinking about how generic your beer is, you're not going to taste the beer. You're going to enjoy the company that you're with.
Right. So this
sounds like a cop-out a little bit, but it's true. Like even when we're all Magic players, the one time I've ever had PBR and kind of enjoyed it and didn't go, God, this is awful, is when we're playing Magic. Somebody hands me a cold PBR. I'm like, well, I'm not drinking anything right now, so I should just...
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, exactly. It's better than not having anything to drink. So a lot of times you just focus on your company.
So we have a joke whenever we get a can of Olympia or like a 12-pack or 6-pack or whatever, which Olympia says, it's the water, which makes it better, right? Is that it's because of the water. And if you cover the word the, it's just, it's water, it's a classic joke. It's so good. But it kind of shows what kind of beer it is. It's, easy drinking, simple sipping, and you just, as long as you're doing something else, it's great. Like you're not focusing on it. So it's just a lot more palatable because it's just something nice to sip on.
Well, before we get into any more ways to improve beer, guys, we got some bad beers, quote unquote bad beers.
We busted out the fades.
We're going to try and improve them. So right now I'm rocking just a classic Coors Light.
So let's do what we always do, right?
We're going to try and critically assess these beers. We all looked up all of our facts and stuff. So Coors Light clocks into 4.2 ABV, and it's got 10 IBUs.
Can you describe a Coors? On the nose?
It's a little rough on the nose. You get a lot of wheat notes from it.
On the nose, it's actually kind of sweet.
Yeah. And then as soon as you taste it, it's just incredibly sweet and palatable. And we've already sort of gotten in this, but there's not a lot going on. It's just sort of a generic beer flavor. But that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's like a little sweet. It does have like the lager flavors, kind of weedy. But other than that, there's not really like anything that's jumping at me like, hey, that's what this is.
It's very quick on the palate. It doesn't reside.
It does. Yeah, there's no residue.
There's just sweetness right at the beginning, and then it just flows off.
It's beer. As you taste it, it's really carbonated, which I think is kind of weird. They probably add carbonation, I would assume, to make it a little bit more like an American carbonated soda kind of thing. But man, it's light wheat flavored water. I mean,
it really is.
Like, I'll be honest. I don't know if we've talked about it on this podcast, but I didn't start drinking alcohol at all until I was 25. So I didn't do the, high school party phase. I didn't do the
me either.
Fucking butt chugging and all the,
Wait, you
shotgun beers and stuff,
I mean, I've shotgun beers, but I've not.
I've shotgun one beer, but like, I didn't grow up around like the Coors Light.
Shout out to the one time you shotgun a beer.
Yeah, the one time Garion shotgun a beer. It was
2 seconds flat.
The most insane shotgun I've ever seen. Like the man can just inhale liquids.
I can certainly do it, but see, that's probably why I stepped away from it. I was like, I'm gonna get fucked up. But I mean, so I'm not used to like these really weak beers. I didn't grow up with those as my launching pad. Like the first real beers that I was drinking were with my brother, who is like we are. He likes real strong IPAs. He likes sours. He likes these interesting beers. And so going to these really light beers, there's literally nothing gross about it. It's sweet. It's wheat. It's water. But there's nothing to like about it to me, at least with the Coors.
All right. So, Garion, you're following our third idea here, which is just add blank.
Yeah, so maybe you're not in a social setting, or maybe the social setting isn't quite interesting enough to get your mind off of the bland taste. So this tends to be my favorite way to treat a beer you're not a fan of, mostly because I like flavorful beers. So if you have a beer that is one note or a beer that is less flavorful than you'd like, hop around and find some ideas of what you like in your beer. Obviously, lemon, lime, some
Coronas
citrus can
have
really
limes.
make it pop, you know?
Limes for Coronas, Blue Moons, and other kind of wits or white beers have these like oranges and things. But really, you just need to find what works for you.
So this is interesting. My beer for this show, my bad beer for this show, is a Corona Premier.
Yeah, we couldn't find the Corona Extra.
Yeah.
It sits at 4% and 7 IBU. Now going straight from the Coors to the Corona, sweeter.
Yeah, so this is a cerveza, right? A Mexican lager.
It's a little bit fruity, but not fruity like you would think of when you're talking about a fruity beer. It's just got like a little extra sweetness and a little extra wheat, maybe?
Just got a little more punch of flavor.
Yeah, so it definitely does have that kind of like elongated sweet note to it, but it's not overly sweet. It does have kind of like that weedy, malty, barley, whatever it is. And then it just kind of drops off and it's just not great.
So one of my favorite ways to upgrade is with a lime.
Yeah, I think that's like the classic thing.
I like adding some flavors, and the easiest citrus fruit that you can put in there is a whole cascade of lime. So we've got a few lime wedges here. Toss them in, and obviously with a Corona, everybody knows Corona goes well with lime. It's in the commercials, it's in the song, tastes great. We're going to see how this elevates.
Yeah, a lot of cervezas in general just use lime just as an added kick.
Yeah, see, so I'm a fan of sours, so that little extra acidity really makes it pop. You lose a little bit of sweetness when you do that, but I think it adds flavor to it, and it adds a little bit of summer crispness.
Yeah, it kind of does what IPAs do when you have that like citrusy, acidic addition to it, which it kind of makes it more, kind of just adds that pop of flavor, that extra little bit. It's adding more flavor so that you have something else to kind of like tease the palate as you go.
Yeah, it adds some depth to it. And I agree, Corona with some lime is way better than just a plain ass Coors.
Honestly, I think this is probably the first time I've ever had Corona without limes. And the last one we've got here,
Yeah, boy. 3 greatest letters ever.
Pabst Blue Ribbon. We got the peeper.
Award winning.
So I'll be honest, this smells bad.
Yep.
It smells like a wounded soldier. For those of you who know what that is. So a wounded soldier is when you're having a party or something like that, and you leave the beer out overnight, and that smell that you get is just like old, stale beer. That's what it smells like, which is not a great thing on the nose. But honestly, coming straight from the Corona with lime, this tastes like a more kind of malty, weedy version of the Coors. There's not that much sweetness to it. It's mostly just the malt that you taste. And it's kind of lingering.
Yeah, I think in conjunction with the idea of the smell, it's just the fact that it has that smell just means that it has more flavor depth to it. And it does have some maltiness and a lot of that sweetness.
Jesus, these beers are fucking carbonated, though.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, I'm just,
the
like,
Corona's
burping
not
and shit.
quite as carbonated, but the Coors and the PBR, it literally swallows like a soda, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's weird because like, I guess I've just been drinking craft beers for too long because I do not like carbonation at all. And it is the one thing about beers that turns me off about them. That's why I always love nitros. But having just a couple gulps of that is just...
It's a lot.
Yeah, it really is.
I love peepers.
I was
kind
going to
of
say,
oppressive.
I think
Shout out to
all
PBR Easy.
all 3 of these beers state a good point, and that's that they are extremely unobtrusive. They're easy to drink. They're not super flavorful, so you're not really looking for complexity or anything spectacular, but the way that people drink these tends to be more quantity and less quality. And so I think that's where these beers really shine, because they really take on sipability. You know what I mean? They're just easy to just tank them.
Yeah. And so I decided I was going to go with an abomination with this peeber.
It hurts me to look at it.
Cory does like his just classic peebers. So not only am I going to throw in some limes, I wanted cucumber. Cory throwing a garnish for me. I appreciate that.
Honestly, it sounds good.
It smells
into
good. It smells like the Corona tastes, but with like a really nice, fresh cucumber vibe to it, which I hope when adding cucumber and limes, that's what you're going to get.
I think it can only help.
Honestly, that's not bad. It is fresh. It is crisp. It is refreshing.
Dude, this carbonation is really out of control for me. I can't even talk. Oh, okay. So we found a way to make a PBR a just delightful little treat.
That's like an 8 out of 10.
That's really good. Actually.
It legitimately, this is something that most people are going to frown upon you for doing, but that is
like cucumbers.
solid
there's
way
nothing
to spice up a peeber.
What the hell?
Woo!
Yeah, that is actually really good.
I think maybe lemons instead of lime because it feels a little sweeter. Limes have a little bit more like a bitter kind of undertone
I'm
to
staying
them.
with the lime.
But the cucumber.
The cucumber really does just
Cucumber
like it adds
makes
this
it.
nice, refreshing vibe to it. So we do want to make sure that whatever you're doing to spice up your beers, however you're trying to improve these quote unquote bad beers, that you're safe, you're responsible, right? The idea of beer before liquor, you'll never be sicker. Liquor before beer, you're in the clear. This is a myth, right? Don't stand by that myth. What matters more is actually the alcohol content of your drinks and the time frame in which you consume it, right? That's so important. Please do not mix alcohol irresponsibly. People talk about like Jaeger bombs and things like that. The idea behind those drinks is to drink as much as you can as fast as possible without throwing up, I think.
So we've upgraded these quote unquote bad beers. We've elevated them to a more palatable level. We've got a social setting. We've added a few things here and there. What do we add to a pre-con to make that palatable? How do you do that?
Oh,
Dual Lance.
Cory's just going to be the chanter here. So we got a lot of ways here that we're talking about upgrading pre-cons, but we're just going to kind of keep it as simple as we can.
I think it's obvious that it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, 100%. So when you've got a pre-con, they make the deck to be general, to have like a lot of stuff going on. They overfill on lands, things like that. So when you get a pre-con, there's usually 3 commanders that the deck can have, right? That match the colors of the deck. And then there's 1 off color, or maybe 2, depending on what year it was. So first and foremost, you got to pick your commander.
A lot of times, the box commander is the one that you want to do.
Yeah.
They do build, and more recently, they've become a little more focused in the way they build. But sometimes, it's not just that you want the deck out of the box to be the best it can be. Sometimes you just want to go in a different direction.
Yeah.
And so you choose the commander that you want to go with. You find the synergies and the playstyle you like, and you build from there.
Yeah, so first, pick your commander. Second, pick your playstyle. The third is take out the cards that don't fit your playstyle, right? So often, this is like the curses or whatever.
Yeah, the weird cycles that aren't, that nobody wants to play.
They're just not good unless you have a deck built around it, and then it's mediocre at best. And then, of course, if you've already picked your commander, the other ones probably don't fit the theme and the playstyle that you're building around, so they got to go too.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, especially when you have brand new cards and you just want to try out all these new commanders in one deck. But if you're trying to focus a deck up, you just have to cut the cards that are just a completely different strategy from what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think a good way to look at it is to buy your pre-cons as either one or the other, or let me tell you, either one or the other, or an evolution of both, of a deck that you just play out of the box with friends, with pre-cons, that just is the way it is, and it's fun because it's new. Or as a way to save money to get a sort of half-baked idea for a little bit cheaper and a little bit more like with the spark of the idea already there. So someone kind of giving you the basics of a deck. And you can do both. We kind of all do this. We find a pre-con and we go, okay, I'm going to play this pre-con because it looks fun. But in the back of our mind, we know
I'm going to upgrade this.
Eventually, this is going to be one way or the other. I'm going to take it to a certain level above this. And we know that that means that eventually we're going to have to run the course of saying this is no longer a pre-con. I have to cut some of these cards even though I just bought them, and I'm going to replace them with something better to make this deck better. And maybe I can use those cards later, maybe not. But that's what I'm doing with this deck.
Yeah, pre-cons are always going to be more bang for your buck because the cards that they print, the reprints, etc., is going to be more than $35, $40, whatever the pre-con at MSRP cost.
Yeah. You're always going to get your value, and it's always just a good jumping on point and just building up point.
So are we going to call this the most important thing for our pre-cons? Is that what we're going to do here?
Yes, absolutely.
I think so.
Yeah.
Add card draw and add ramp. Almost always.
I think at this point, everybody will tell you that these are the two most important things to just make your deck work just exponentially better across the board. No matter if you put one or two awesome $100 cards in your deck, if you can never draw the cards or never play the cards, then it doesn't matter that they're in the deck.
Yeah, so when you're adding ramp and card draw, it's kind of rough because especially, our own list of things to, put in a commander deck, it's hard to just put these cards in. You want ones that are hopefully synergistic with your deck, and that's just unfortunately not always possible. So sometimes you kind of just have to bite the bullet and put these cards in.
Yeah, I think a good example is in my Marin deck, Sakura Tribe Elder is already just a really good ramp card, but the fact that he sacrifices himself, which is what Marin wants him to do, just adds another level because he's helping out ramping and getting experience counters. So he's helping the deck synergize.
We want to add in cards that fit our playstyle, and that sort of means the playstyle of the deck, but it also means how you feel comfortable and how
your
you
personal
enjoy playing the game.
Yeah, if I'm an enchantment player and I want to play, I don't like a graveyard synergies deck, then I probably want to throw in enchantments to do that.
Yes. However, we always need to remember the cardinal rule. You have to remember your curve. I fell into the trap of this with my first pre-con that I upgraded. You go, it was Edgar Markov, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. The first things that I wanted to do was, holy shit, I'm in Mardu. I got vampires. I'm going to add in the biggest, nastiest cards, and I'm going to whoop some ass. And the truth
said it
is,
exactly like that.
I probably did. And the truth is that you put those into a deck that's already not quite up to speed.
I think the average CMC on that deck is like 4.68.
Well, and especially in a meta that's already way tuned away from a precon. You will never cast those cards ever. And if you do, you've already lost the game because you tried real hard to get to those cards. So yes, you want to fit your playstyle. You want to fit your preferences and what your deck is doing.
But you also have to
always mind the curve. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how many cool cards you have if you can't play them until turn 6, which means you might not actually be able to play them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us agree that, especially when making and upgrading decks, just cutting cards is incredibly difficult sometimes.
So hard, especially with precons, I think, because a lot of people do look at it as these 100 cards, I just bought them, it's my baby, it's my deck. So if you look at it like that, it's going to be very hard to upgrade it because you have to cut cards.
Yeah, my strategy recently has been to make categories in the categories that, card drop, ramp, removal, etc. And then if I'm upgrading a precon specifically, then I have 100 cards. If I am going to put a card in, I have to look at the precon and take one of those out that matches the thing, or that, I'm getting to 10 card draw or 10 ramp or something like that. And then I make sure that if I'm putting a card in, I'm taking one out, and I'm always at 100 because it's the only way I can stay at 100. Because otherwise, I have 130 cards.
Right.
Fuck, I have to make 30 cuts? I know. Cut all lands. Yeah, don't cut your lands.
5 lands.
So I think we've already said these past 3 things are the most important thing, but I think this next one is equally as important.
Yeah, so I think that precons are just insanely guilty of this. I don't know why Wizards just keeps on doing this. I think that you have one card that matches this in any given deck if you have that one card. It's not always there. It's always just synergy. Yeah, tribal synergy. That'll totally make you win the game. But
so what we're talking about is you need to have a way to win the game.
Right.
And I think...
And hopefully not just one way.
Yeah.
One card.
I think the easiest thing you think of is just put an infinite combo in there. It's okay.
But most infinite combos aren't going to actually win the game themselves.
Yeah. Just having one combo in your deck doesn't guarantee that you're ever going to get all the combo pieces and play it. So I think trying to build a deck without ways to win is just a waste of your time and everybody that you're playing with.
Yeah.
And I understand I make a lot of combat-focused decks, and so sometimes the way to win is just attack as much as possible.
And that's a totally viable way to win. But if you're looking at like, oh, I'm making a creature deck, it's just like, okay, do you have haste enablers, ways to give your creatures evasion, trample, any of those things? Like, those are the enablers to your win con. Your win con is big, stompy creatures. That's totally fine unless they don't have ways to actually push through damage. Otherwise, they're just chumpable creatures that your opponents don't care about.
Yeah, and I actually suffered from this problem in one of the iterations of my Marin deck, if we want to go back to that. And I could clear people's hands and clear people's boards just fine. I could blow up everything they ever had, but I couldn't finish a game reasonably. I'd be swinging with Marin or occasionally an Emrakul, and then
if that creature was gone, then that was it.
Sounds spooky.
Yeah.
But if you can't kill everybody, you're still not going to win.
Exactly. And so I had to upgrade my ways to win, because just having a board stall isn't making me win. It's giving my opponents time to kill me.
For answers, yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the decks that's kind of like easy to look at is the Zedru deck, because the biggest win con that we could find in the deck was Insurrection, but that only is a win con if your opponents have creatures that you can steal and attack with. Otherwise, it's like, how do you win with that deck? Or the Beast deck, right? Like, that deck has a lot of big stompy creatures, but a lot of them don't actually have any evasion or trample. Like, if you have one thing that gives them trample, that's great, but if otherwise they don't have trample, they're just a big dumb creature that doesn't do anything.
Trumped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to be able to close to be able to win games.
Yeah, and I think we're not trying to steer people to say just throw in cards that say you win the game, or just throw in infinite combos in
We're not
deck.
talking about like going infinite. We're not talking about like alternate win combos.
Yeah, we're just saying that you need to build synergies and strategies into your deck that overall help you win the game at every moment, or they're pushing you in that direction.
Yeah, and you could have like a deck like a Storm deck, right? Where the Storm cards are technically your win con.
Yeah.
But every card, like cantrips or otherwise, that allow you to storm off are the cards that are actually making you win the game.
Right, just because you have a Tendrils of Agony does not mean you're going to cast 20 spells.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so like, it's like, I think 8 or 9 in Modern, something like that, because of fetch land and stuff like that is where you actually need to get to for Tendrils to be lethal. And it's like, okay, you have to be able to get to 8 or 9, cast Tendrils, and like have all of that resolve. And so, okay, technically you only need Tendrils to resolve, but like, you get the point that you have to have all of that going into it before your deck even matters.
Yep.
And so a lot of the stuff we're talking about is Commander specifically, but when we're talking about precons, like, I think most
technically precons can be the dual decks and stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that too.
But you do need a way to win, and I feel like control decks often have like the obvious, this is my win con, the rest of it is helping me survive.
Yeah, just I think whatever your win con is extremely dependent on your strategy.
All right, so if we're talking about precons here, let's kind of stick to the Commander theme here. If you've changed your deck, you've thrown in a win con, you probably are going to have to adjust your land base to fit your new deck. You're probably changed. I mean, the deck that we're going to talk about has changed vastly in its mana base requirements from what it used to be.
Yeah. In the latest Commander set, they've actually done a lot better when it comes to the land base. I think
significantly better.
I think the color fixing and lands that they're putting in we haven't seen this since the 2016 Commander decks. And I think one of the reasons that people see those Commander decks as the best is
there were
because
4 colors and they had to support
the mana
that.
base was just so well built, and you always got your colors almost every game.
Yeah, which for 4 colors in a precon is
really
surprisingly good, and like, especially since a lot of the lands they put in are tap lands, but you're consistently able to get the colors you need when you need it, and that's honestly something that is very difficult to build on your own, let alone to have, corporate make the fucking deck so that you can play it regularly.
Yeah, and so obviously what we're talking about is upgrading your mana base.
Yeah.
And just like with the win cons, is like, oh, just throw in an infinite combo. People could say, just throw in dual lands, or just throw in all your shocks and fetches. And that is obviously one way to immediately upgrade your deck 1,000 times over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
but
something
it's just really hard.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So I like to put in the slow fetches just because they're inexpensive and they're going to do the job. But we've got like Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse. But I also like to do the other slow fetches like Mountain Valley, which allows you to search for a basic land type. So it allows you, like Mountain Valley lets you search for a forest or a mountain. And that allows me to get things like Shocklands. And I can replace a tap land 1-for-1 with one of these slow fetches. And they're like $1. So it's still like an inexpensive way to do it while still getting like a $5-6 Shockland, which is actually the land that I need.
Yeah, Wizards, especially lately, has done a lot better at printing these really good dual color lands. So we had like the bicycle lands of Amonkhet, which had the land type on them and had cycling.
From Battle for Zendikar, you've got the battle lands.
Yeah, and then there's like the check lands.
So you have your true dual lands, which are of course the OG duels. You've got shock lands. You've got battle lands from BFC, which are the ally colors. You've got bicycle lands from Amonkhet. And then you have the ones that are not technically duels because they don't have a basic land type. But you've got pain lands, scry lands, check lands, which check for basic land types. Which also includes the Tainted Land cycle, which check for swamp. Yeah, you've got the Bond lands from Battle Bond. That one's great for really Commander, good. But they've also gone up in price. You have the Man lands, which turn into creatures. Fast lands, which as long as you have 0 or between 0 and 2 lands, they come in untapped.
Yeah.
You've got Reveal lands, which you play, and they come in untapped if you can reveal a land that has a basic land type of their color.
Yeah.
The filter lands, of course, bounce lands, tap lands, which are all over the place. These are all ways that you can change your mana base to fit your things. And you're trying to avoid playing these tap lands, so you have all of those other dual lands of the type. But there's ways to make it so that you can get your colors on curve, on time, and have them untapped.
Yeah, most of these lands are $5 or less. And how I like to look at them is like a tap land is 100% of the time going to come in tapped, while these lands have even just a chance to come in untapped. So they're already infinitely better than just a regular old tap land.
So the next thing, Garion, I think is where your brother Sean is at with a lot of his decks. He knows what he wants his decks to do. He's got his decks. He doesn't really want to make new decks unless you just pull some sick card and then he sells it at the shop when I really need that card. Sean, why did you sell Kaikar? But that's to bling out your deck.
Oh, yeah. I think part of it is because he's got really fun, good decks, and so he's kind of at that point where
they just fit his playstyle so well, and he's like played them for so long.
Yeah,
that he's just
like, do I
I'm
build
going to keep
another deck?
Exactly.
Or should I just make these really cool? He's also, he's got a good job.
Yeah, and he likes the decks that he plays, and he knows that the cards that he's going to bling out are going to be awesome, right? So when I say bling out, what I mean is foils, right? That's the shiny, that's the bling. Foils, we've got just the better lands, which, yeah, it's part of adjusting your land base, but sometimes adjusting your land base is to put in the right color.
It's a little bit of swag, too.
Yeah. But to have, like, good shock lands or, like, for me, it's scry lands because I love the art on the scry lands.
Temples,
yeah.
Yeah, and so Sean actually, he ordered one from the Commander Cookout guys.
Shouts out.
And he asked for the Gray Merchant of Asphodel, or Scary Gary, as we like to call him.
I just call him Gary.
And it's so good.
So good.
Those lines are so clean.
So what they've done is that they've taken a Gray Merchants of Asphodel, or Gary, or Scary Gary, whatever you want to call him, and they've turned it into a full art, non-bordered
Yeah,
card.
it's basically like if you've seen any of the box toppers for the master sets or the promos, I think the Planeswalkers had them.
Yeah. They've got like the Mythic Edition Planeswalkers or the unstable tokens. They go all the way to the edge of the card rather than having that modern border around them.
Yeah, and so that's what they took, and they just basically got rid of making it look like a Magic card.
Yeah.
Except keeping the name and the text box and just expanding it to take up the whole card.
I think it's
beautiful.
Extra swagalicious when you get it commissioned like Sean did. He actually had Commander Cookout. He had Brando. Literally, he sent him a card. Brando painted the art, like border out.
So this is news to me. I didn't know that he'd
throw
that. Awesome.
It is
good job, Brando. And
so sick.
Yeah.
So
oh my
I
God.
honestly saw it as I was actually on the way to hang out with Cory, and it was just like, wait, is this yours? This is awesome. He's just like, no, that's Sean's. And I was just like, this is awesome. He looks, he's like, I know.
Dude,
I know.
every time they post their altars on Facebook, because he does an auction each week of some of the altars that he's done, I'm just like, man, I want them all. They're so cool.
Altars are sick. The thing to note, though, is that if you're playing in a tournament, which Commander you probably aren't going to, but they're not tournament legal. All right, so the next thing is something that we're going to talk about more in the future, but for now, we'll kind of just just hit it a little bit.
You've got to adjust to your meta. So adjusting your deck to a better playstyle, to a more fun playstyle, to your specific playstyle, your commander, your colors, that's all fine and well. Adjusting it to a synergistic spot, that's also really great.
But if you're making a ridiculously overpowered deck, the people in your meta are not going to have fun. If you're making the super cool beast deck, everything's a 6-drop, whatever, you're probably going to lose the game because everyone else in your meta is probably going to play, like 3 drops
Better,
and just
faster removal.
be able to play the game.
If you know that you play in a faster meta and you know that there's a lot of threats, you might have to kill one of your big dudes to add some targeted removal. You have to have answers. If your meta is heavy on the threats, you have to be heavy on the answers. And the last thing we have on this list of ways to upgrade a precon is to add new cards from the new sets and cut some old ones.
So I think, especially in the last few set reviews that we've done, we've sort of been keeping or having a section on cards that we think would be upgrades for our current deck. So just like, hey, this card's cool for Sean's deck. Or like, this is a goblin, I'll probably throw it in my goblin deck. Stuff like that. And so I think just this idea of you're always paying attention to new cards, just keeping up to date.
The cards that you have, to me, the most important saying when it comes to like cutting cards and making adjustments to deck is kill your darlings.
Yep.
Like there are certain cards that you absolutely love and you put in every single deck. That's probably one of the first cards you're going to need to cut because you have this confirmation bias, this fallacy that this is one of the best cards, or you have confirmation bias in that you've seen it do work, right? Like I've got Insurrection in one of my decks.
I won a game with this card.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's good.
And you have to be able to look at cards rationally rather than being like, this card won me the game, I'm not cutting it, versus just like, how often is that card actually going to do work in the deck? How often are you going to be able to play that card in a situation that wins you the game versus how often you can play that card and it's going to have any effect, or how often you can play that card and it's just going to be average. Like we talked about quadrant 3 before.
Yeah.
And you really have to evaluate cards and be like, okay, is this good early game? Is it good, when you're tied with everyone? Is it good late game? Is it good late game when you're behind? All right.
So
we've been talking, I think, a little too much on this topic because what we really want to get to is Garion's deck. So we're going to do a deck tech for all of these episodes. Obviously, we've already done 3 of them thus far. Let's get to number 4. We're talking about Edgar Markov, the precon.
it's a precon that everyone bought.
I mean,
Just
it
for
is
one
very
card.
Popular, yeah.
Which I think is up to like $60 right now. It's insane.
a lot.
Garion, tell me about it.
First of all, I should have bought 12 of them.
First off, we all,
Bought them at $30. So
I bought the cat
I'm a-
deck.
bought it for
I'm an
$30 bucks?
idiot.
Bought it for $30 fucking dollars.
Holy
yeah.
crap. Okay, so first off, let's talk about like mana base, ramp, card drop. Were those
So-
things that you were targeting first off just to fix it up because you knew it was a precon, you knew that it's going to have issues. It's 3 colors. Did they do a good job?
I was going to say, in some ways, this is a good deck for a comparison of this topic, and in some ways, it's not, because C17 was actually a pretty good year. There were decent synergies in these decks, especially this one because it was so heavily tribal. However, it's a very fine example of, oh, you went tribal, so everything's going to be good, right? Maybe.
Not the case.
So the mana base was okay. It was spread well, but it was extremely slow. There were a lot of tap lands, like just tap lands, and there were a lot of bounce lands, which are cool, but they're just so fucking slow.
I think that those cards, though, are necessary for WotC to print these decks.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
it balances the mana base and allows you to actually look at it. So
They were one of the first things that I looked at and went, that's got to go.
yeah. So if
Because this deck wants to be fast.
right, so that's how you went with it. But
Right.
so if you go to deckstats.net, we have our UNTAP Upkeep drink page, and on that we've got the decks that we've reviewed so far, and we have Garion's Markov deck, and in that you're going to find 4 decks. We've got Garion's C17 Markov cuts, the Markov additions, Garion's Markov deck, the deck that it is now. It was updated last in September, so this is maybe a little out of date, but it's what we're running with right now. And then the C17 Markov Vampires, which is the original deck list. So when we're looking at the original deck list, it's 66% black with a 38% mana source for black. So there is kind of a discrepancy there, but you really, when you're looking at like a 3-color deck like this, you don't want to go below about 25% for your off colors. So for this, it's white and red. And so I think that even though they have what is it, like 18%, 16%, somewhere in there for your actual like red and white. You want to stay above 25% chance. So that way you actually get those lands that you have. And so that's where the tap lands and the bounce lands come in.
So we've talked about a couple things when upgrading precons that you run into that I think were exactly where I was at when I started. Of course, you play it right out of the box because why not? You're going to see
because they're fun.
How it runs.
Bad.
This particular deck had the run of commanders that had eminence, and so it was a unique.
And so this happens to be the one that is the most broken.
Right. It was a unique deck building experience because where a lot of these commander decks, you build heavily around your commander, but also work in some ways to protect your commander. This deck did not have that problem at all.
Imagine that. You never have to play your commander. Yeah. It's always protected.
You build heavy around that commander and you don't give a shit where he's at because he could die, you could never cast him, and things are pretty much going to run smoothly. However, what this deck does is creates an extra vampire. That's really the big thing you're doing is every time you cast a vampire, you get a vampire token.
Will you please read Edgar Markov?
Oh,
Eddie.
I will.
G.
So Edgar Markov reads 3 white, red, black. So 3 in Mardu for a 4/4 legendary creature vampire knight. Whenever you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, create a 1/1 black vampire creature token. He has first strike and haste, and whenever Edgar Markov attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of stuff there, but
So
really...
if he was like 5 mana and didn't have the eminence ability, he would be good.
He'd be super good.
And he instead has 1 extra mana and instead has an eminence ability that is arguably just stupid good.
Super
Especially in those colors.
What this allows you to do is lower your CMC, and you're playing some less potent vampires, but you're doubling their potency. Not necessarily doubling, but giving them a 50% boost. You're tagging on a buddy with every vampire that you play. So where I went with this was I want this deck to be fast, I want it to be efficient, and I want it to be aristocrats, which is a theme where we're sacrificing our creatures, and lo and behold, every creature that I create has a buddy that can be sacrificed. So that's kind of how I leaned.
So you cut 27 cards, added 27 cards. What are the highlights?
So I made a list here of 5 of kind of my all-stars, the standouts additions that I really either wanted to add or knew would be good to add.
To be fair, I did limit you to only 5.
True. I probably could have listed several more.
27.
Yeah. Imagine this. He has Demonic Tutor. He put Demonic Tutor in the deck. That's one of the top cards of the deck. Surprise.
It's not in my main cards that I added. That wasn't in the top 5. It should be, but it's not. My first one, Exsanguinate. This was one of the cards that I was pretty excited to add simply because it scales with the game and it's a way, like we were talking about, to win. It's a way to close. A lot of times you're draining, you're doing some of these sacrifice themes, you're getting some of that damage into your opponents, but you're not able to do the full amount and take everybody out at once. So Exsanguinate reads, X black for a sorcery. Each opponent loses X life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way.
So, notably, this is a combo with Sanguine Bond, which is 3 black for an enchantment. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life.
So, Exsanguinate is a really good way to close the game. You can deal a lot of damage late game, but it's also just a really good way to create a huge disparity.
Yeah, and so the combo with Sanguine Bond basically just means that you gain twice that much life and they lose that twice that much life.
So one of the only cards that I left in there that's actually a pretty hefty mana cost is another way to combo with Sanguine Bond. It's Blood Tribute. So it's a sorcery for 4 black. And it says, Kicker, tap an untapped vampire creature you control. I'm making a lot of random untapped vampires. Target opponent loses half his or her life rounded up. If Blood Tribute was kicked, you gain life equal to life lost this way. So Sanguine Bond, every time you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. This is also an insta-kill combo.
I've been insta-killed by this I don't know how many times.
'Tis fun, but it is not an instant win. Just remember.
Right. So so instant kills are not instant wins,
Right.
which we talked about on our alternate win con episode with Michael.
Yeah.
And I mean, Here it is. Sorry, I just want, before we keep going with your deck, we never actually talked about our beers again.
Ooh, let's get into some beers. The Corona, it's okay.
Corona on its own, totally fine.
Good.
It's a beer.
It's okay. Corona with lime, pretty solid.
A little better, yeah.
Bang.
Honestly, I like Corona with lime. I think that it's a nice summer beer.
It's refreshing.
But
But it's-
Corona on its own is pretty crisp. Add that lime, you get that refreshing, that crispness. I love Corona with lime in the summer. Cory, how was the ye old Coors?
Coors, it's okay.
The thing is that I feel like a lot of our listeners right now are like, these guys didn't actually drink those fucking beers.
Unfortunately,
But we
did.
actually
and we
did, yeah.
got tall
I
boys
was gonna say, you can see in the
because we didn't
video,
want to buy 6-packs.
24 fucking ounces of Corona.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
You
think
haven't quite finished yet. He's got like 6 ounces. I finished my Peeber, but like, I'll let Cory talk about the Coors here and the generics.
Yeah, I don't know. Just in college, all we drank was Coors Light, Natty Light, Bud Light, just all of that shit beer. And so I'm used to it. Like, I don't hate it. It's I can drink 100 of them. I don't care.
Honestly, I think I only drank Peebers in college unless I was hanging out with you guys, and then it was just whatever you guys had.
Yeah,
So let's move on to
the good beers.
these.
I'm not done
supposedly-
talking about my PBR.
PBR.
On its own, it was
PBR.
totally fine. It was a lager. Had like, honestly, it was kind of interesting going between the three beers.
It was.
Yeah.
Right? Because like
Everyone thinks, it's a
Cory's,
shit
you
beer.
had
It's
the
all shit
Coors
beer.
Light, and it had like
Affirms my bias against Coors Light. Not
Yeah.
good.
no, it's just like light sweetness, light lager kind
Yeah,
of malty
it's-
taste, and that was it. And then you have the Corona, which had more sweetness. Again, kind of that like malty stuff.
Islandish.
But then it stops, right?
Yeah.
And then you get the PBR, which had virtually no
had-
sweetness to it.
but had
But
malty goodness.
it had, yeah, exactly. And just the fact that we have these, three quote unquote bad beers here that all have their own flavor profiles. And it's not just every generic beer is just going to be the same thing. All right. So let's talk about the craft beers. Let's get to the stuff that we really want to talk about.
All right.
Craft
Salt Lake
beer.
City, Utah. I'm a little, personally, slightly underwhelmed. The Saltfire Brewing Company, Charlotte Sometimes, to me, the truth is that this Charlotte Sometimes is very close to these watered down, easy drinking lagers. I will say it is sessionable.
Yeah,
It's crisp
it,
and refreshing.
It has, yeah, I was going to say, it has this more crisp and sharp flavors than what a lager does. Like the notes that it has is like to a point, whereas a lager is just kind of even, I want to say, whereas this is like, there's a just tiny hint of sweetness, and then like, boom, here's your malts. And then after that peak, it just kind of slowly fades away.
Yeah, it's incredibly smooth, but I think there's not like that punch that you really want.
It has a little more fruit sweet forward than the rest of these.
Especially on the nose. Like
Quote,
the nose
unquote.
does have this like
yeah,
really
yeah.
nice like
Yeah,
floral
it had
fruitiness.
that kind of funk to it.
Yeah.
A little bit of funk, maybe those esters we learned about that are a little banana-y, maybe.
Yeah, just
A little bit, but very subtle. And I think even this beer needs a little bling to it to be, to me, super palatable.
Okay, talking about upgrading beers and stuff, what would you add to this beer?
To me, I think it would be really good. Obviously, with a little citrus wakes every beer up, but I think something a little bit, and I like sweet drinks, so like a dash of apple juice. Something with just like a little bit of sweet and a little bit of fruit to give it like the illusion of having more complex flavor.
See, to me, I want to go into that funky realm, but I want to add like some spice, like Indian spice or like some coriander or something like that.
Good, yeah.
And I think that would really just like punch that to the next level.
Cardamom.
Yeah, I think
exactly.
yeah.
Some cardamom pods that you like.
Oh, yeah.
You toast some cardamom pods and you put that in. I think
That
that
actually
would be.
really
yeah,
good.
I think
That'd be awesome.
that like I was being serious when I said a social aspect, but I'm not just saying like hanging out with your friends. I'm just like if you had like a barbecue and you were just cooking up some dope food, like and you're just sitting outside just enjoying.
I think this is
summer
a great like
sunshine,
outside summer beer.
This would be like
it really is
such a go-to
because
beer.
it's not like
Yeah, and-
distracting or
Yeah, it's just
imposing
so
on anything.
easy to drink. I'm not trying to bag on this beer. I think it's good. I just think it could be more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the Montucky lager.
Montucky.
It's a lot of fun to say, but I think
Wait,
This one-
Montucky is from where?
Montana.
Oh,
So Lucky Montana, baby.
yeah. I was thinking that was a Kentucky beer, that just was like a mountain Kentucky beer or something like that.
No, it's the
Montana.
unofficial beer of Montana.
Don't give me the bullshit. What is that?
Yours
The
is
greatest beer that's ever come out of Montana.
I was
It's
going to
got
say
a
yours
cool
is
can.
kind
Really
of
say that?
similar in this realm where it's a wheat beer with some.
It's just your like a
mellow
standard
flavors,
plain
yeah.
lager, but I think that like just having like a nice juicy burger with that, I think it'd go down so well.
So the last one we have here is the Roadhouse Brewery from Jackson Hole, which we all know and love. It is the Mountain Jam Volume 4. What happened to 1 through 3? Why didn't I get to taste those?
Is it like a seasonal beer? Or
Yeah,
a
it is.
Yearly thing.
It is. But it's a hazy IPA, and I didn't read this before, and I completely messed up by not doing so. So it is a hazy IPA with strawberry and kiwi. Pairs well with Thai food and a thing called love.
Oh shit, son!
It's a song for those of you who don't know. Notes: it's slick, funky, witty, and smooth.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I mean,
I
definitely a
didn't
little
get
funky
any of the strawberry or
Strawberry,
kiwi.
no.
I was gonna say I didn't
got
get the music.
citrusy.
Gary, play us that song.
I felt no love.
Disagree with the music choice, but
I just love that they have this like poem of sorts on it. Like,
yeah, sometimes we get some cans or bottles in that you can't help but read what the label says because it's too good, and that's one of those labels that just has.
You almost have to buy the beer when you read
It
it.
has flavor on the outside and the inside.
Very much an IPA on the nose, like we said before.
yeah, but it's.
There's so much more hops in the nose than in the mouth.
Yeah, this is the beer of the show, hands down.
For sure. And I'm going to say this, and people are going to go crazy because we just called it the beer of the show. It's a little armpit sweaty. You know what I mean?
No,
Just like a little bit.
Maybe that's just because we've been in the studio for a while.
Yeah. But
But
it is a little funky.
Yeah, it's
They're not
funky.
wrong.
I mean,
It's
IPAs,
got
yeah.
a whole lot of hop that's like subdued under sweetness. It's pretty sweet.
It's
almost.
the flavor of hop that I always want to talk about.
I'm not
right?
getting
It's-
strawberry or kiwi. I'm getting grapefruit, kind of.
Yeah, you get that citrus, and like you guys are saying, it's hop forward, but it's not like hops,
It's not the
bitterness,
crazy
like what
not
you
the
think
bitter-
of an
exactly.
IPA. It's just what you think of a hazy IPA, which is that bitter floralness
Yeah.
just coming through in addition to all of these notes.
I think I like it better the second time I tried it. I like it.
I've been sipping on it the whole time,
Yeah,
and it's been
it's groovy.
good.
It's weird though, like going from like these generics and like these branded beers versus like this craft brewery that I've only seen one other of their beer, and this one is better than that one. But this is a good beer.
So,
All right.
you guys want to talk about deck here?
I mean, I guess.
So,
Yeah, getting back to the cards.
Yeah. Talk about exsanguinate. Next card on the list is one that we talked about
we've already heard about this guy. haven't
2
we?
days ago, maybe.
He's a big boy.
He's a real great guy. Perforos, God of the Forge. He's 3 and a red for a legendary enchantment creature, God. He's a 6/5 with indestructible, and as long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Perforos is not a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Perforos deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you can pay 2 and a red. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. It's
Less
kinda
important.
Cool. I was gonna say it's kind of cool because he's like buffing your dudes. So this guy is, I personally think, an all-star in this deck because of the way that I chose to play it. I chose to play low to the ground, playing vampires, getting free vampires. This card specifically reads, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control. So you do not have to cast these vampires. They just have to show up to the party.
So you're saying
So basically, Perforos, instead of reading 2 damage to each opponent, it says 4 damage.
4 damage to
for each creature
opponent.
that resolves.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're trying to do with this deck is sort of a fusion of aristocratic black life drain and red aggro straight to your face damage. We're trying to ruin the entire board all at once as fast as we possibly can.
I'm a little disappointed you're not just reading what you wrote verbatim.
So, Perforos, this is what came to my heart as I explained Perforos to Drew. Like we said, the value of extra tokens is good, but not great.
I would disagree. I think it's great.
This all-star behemoth creates an environment where each of those vampires and their token buddies punish all of our opponents at once. Me likey.
You're going to hear a lot of weird stuff that Garion says.
Buckle up. Buckaroonies.
All right, so we've got the next card on my list, Bantu's Monument.
I would like to read this one because this is one of the cards that is close to my heart.
This card, I think the monuments are underrated.
They're
just
very
throwing
good.
that.
So
out there.
Bantu's Monument, like all of the monuments, is just 3 generic mana. It's a legendary artifact, and this one specifically is black creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So for each of the God Cycle from Amonkhet, has a monument that allows you to cast creature spells of their color for 1 less, 1 generic less. And whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So that's Bantu's Monument. It just has this drain effect, and it's each opponent, which is very good in this deck. Very good. So why don't you tell me about Bantu's Monument?
So this cute little artifact ends up being ramp and life drain. Did I mention that this deck was 65 to 70% black and very creature heavy? So the cost reduction is incredible here. Also, adding the dual effect of draining each opponent for every creature, it just adds the cherry on top, baby. This is exactly what this deck wants to do. It's ramp, it's damage, it's life gain, it's low CMC already. Number 4 on this list, Elenda the Dusk Rose.
Holy shit, I fucking love this card. So,
I don't know. 4 mana for 1/1.
okay, shut
This gal here pushes the Ridges scale up to 9,000.
You hold on.
9,000.
You be quiet. I'm gonna read Elenda.
Yeah, let's read the card, bro.
So she's 2 white-black for a legendary creature, Vampire Knight. As Cory said, she's a 1/1, but she has lifelink. And
It's important.
whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Elenda the Dusk Rose. So really important in the aristocrat strategy. And
We're going to have a lot of vampires dying.
well, since there's only vampires in this deck, that makes sense. But when Elenda dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Elenda's power.
What we're seeing here in the pattern of the cards that I'm including is that, yes, it is a very black-centric deck, but the cards that I'm splashing these colors for are extremely impactful cards.
Yeah, they do exactly what the deck wants to do. They add to it. They add that punch. And more importantly, I think, especially with Elenda, is that she can die, right?
Yeah.
Which a lot of the cards, I think that she's one of the only cards that you actually have that when she dies, it matters.
Yeah,
but when she does, holy shit, is it powerful.
I think her death trigger is incredibly powerful, but because of that, she is a really, really bad commander. Because you never want your commander to die and put it in the graveyard, because you always want to put it back in command zone so you can keep casting it. But the fact that she's just in the 99,
yeah, she's one of the
10 times better.
She's one of the best legendary creatures that you can have in your 99, in my opinion, just because she is shit in the command zone.
she's always going to get value.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I mean, she's obviously incredibly good, but another reason why I really like her is because in this deck specifically, because it's aristocratic or an aristocrat's theme, we are controlling a lot of the deaths on the board. And so we're sacrificing, we are using a lot of removal, we're creating an environment where we decide who dies when, and if she has to die, if I need the mana, if I need the effect, it's not a bad thing. She just fuels the sacrifice engine over and over. So Elenda's incredibly good.
Yeah.
I really like her in the deck.
Yeah.
But one other Orzhov
Legend.
pretty little lady made the deck honestly technically on top. She's number 5 on the list, but she was one of the very first cards I wanted to include because I played against her as a commander in one of my brother's decks. It's Tymna the Weaver.
Cory, you know about Tymna.
I know way too much about Tymna. I've been destroyed by this card an awful lot of times. So Tymna the Weaver is 1 white-black for a 2/2 legendary creature human cleric with lifelink. That's it.
She does. Yeah, that's nothing.
Awesome ability that says
Partner.
at the beginning.
She's a partner. She has partner. That's what it is.
At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, you may pay X life, where X is the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. If you do, draw X cards. So I think Tymna, she's top tier for good reasons. just because the idea that you can draw as many as 3 extra cards each turn is an incredibly powerful effect.
Yeah. Pay 3 life, draw 3 cards just for doing normal combat
And
things.
the fact that she's 3 mana, she can be your commander, and the fact that she doesn't have to attack.
But if she does, she has lifelink
That's
to
the big part.
reimburse
Yeah.
the life that you're paying for these cards.
I do have an honorable mention here. 6th card that I'm a big fan of.
See, this card, I'll be honest, I included in a lot of decks when I was playing, like, janky Modern. And then there's one specific card. Cory, you know which card it is that made me cut this card. So, Garion, why don't you read out? What is
So I have
Tragic
Slip. It's 1 black for an instant. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. But it also has Morbid. It says that creature gets -13/-13 until end of turn instead if a creature died this turn. I think value in the deck, this is a great card. Value for my wallet, this is a great card. And I'm going to be, again, controlling so much of the deaths. I think the likelihood of me hitting the Morbid trigger literally is 80 to 90%.
Yeah, it's very likely. Anytime you want to play this card, it's going to do what you want to do.
Yeah. I'm not going to be that asshat who says it's 100% because you guys are going to catch me in a game where I can't do it, and it's going to happen. It just happens to everybody.
I think just even if this is one of the cards that you can always just play in your second main phase after you swing with some 1/1s. We were like, I'll chump block some 1/1s. I don't want you doing it. I was like,
He's like,
you got.
bitch. I got you.
Now your commander's dead.
Yeah. So this episode has gone on way too long. Let me go through the normal end of episode spiel. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook at UUD Podcast. And we're also on Instagram and YouTube. Just look us up. Untap, Upkeep, Drink. You're already here. You might as well stay around for a little bit. Of
Like,
course.
share, subscribe.
Yeah.
Follow us. Let us know what you're doing.
Yeah, all like all of the
standard
social
stuff.
media, social media standard stuff.
Definitely try to check out the YouTube videos because we're going to try and at least flash up all the cards we're talking about if we haven't read them all.
And of course, on Instagram. Will somebody else please do this?
Drew's feeling a little self-conscious about promoting his own shit, but we did name a segment on our Instagram page, Drew's Brews, because every time we leave brews at Drew's house for the podcast, they end up in his tummy before we
That
get
is
there.
not accurate.
Maybe
Do
not every time.
Whenever I buy beers, I buy extra ones because sometimes I want to have a nice beer.
Well, and the truth is we all drink beer off the show. Some of the beers that we just drink because we like beer doesn't make the show. So we wanted to find a way to kind of repurpose those beers and at least show everybody what we're drinking and how it was. So we're kind of doing a quick review on Instagram. So thank you guys so much for taking a little dive into this cute little vampire family tree I tried to create here with the Markov Manor.
Seems like a lot of incest.
Probably a lot of incest.
I
You're
hope
probably right.
so.
I hope you guys like it. If you have your own Markov decks, which I'm sure you do, let me know. Like, tell me what you're running. Tell me what's your all-star.
And of course, let us know what beers you're drinking. We legitimately do want to know. We love when people show us new beers.
So thank you guys for checking out the deck. And as always,
Have fun.
But not too much.